Hi guys, what's up, what's down, what's sideways? Day 85 of chronic fatigue syndrome. My friend, my enemy, my constant companion. What will I talk about today? Pattern interrupt. So I thought, so today I read a post and yesterday, I don't know, days blend. Someone said, how do I not act suboptimally to those around me? They say like, how do I not be an asshole? And you know, and they went on to say like, oh, I've got chronic fatigue syndrome, and there are times when I become very irritable and rah rah. Now, chronic fatigue syndrome doesn't make you that kind of person. That's all on you. So, the thing with it is like people like to blame something else. You know, my chronic fatigue syndrome makes me irritable and impatient, and then I take it out on the ones I love, and you know, I'm a bit of a jerk to them, and rah rah rah. Well, the thing is, if you took chronic fatigue syndrome away, you hear this same word pattern from people who are healthy, who are normal. So it's not that chronic fatigue syndrome turns you into a bit of a jerk. It's something that you experience, and then you use it as an excuse for when you are. Now, before anyone gets really upset, yeah, chronic fatigue syndrome will make you irritable. It will make you Sorry, I shouldn't say will. Chronic fatigue syndrome can make you anxious, irritable, cranky, impatient, those kind of things. But chronic fatigue syndrome, there is never a reason for mistreating those in your life. You know, because you're having a bad day doesn't mean that you should then go and cause a bad day in other people. Now, yes, it sounds all very well on paper. Like, yes, of course, James. Yeah, you know, that sounds like, yeah, it's much easier said than done, and that is the truth of it. It doesn't stop the truth of it being that your chronic fatigue syndrome is not the fault for you mistreating people in your life. You know, chronic fatigue syndrome may cause you to feel those things, but then how you respond to those things with the people in your life, that's on you. You know, the chronic fatigue syndrome doesn't rear its head and go, "Oh, you must talk to someone like this." Rah. If it does, a medical professional should be sought. And then people say like, what can I do about this? I don't want to respond this way. I don't want to do this. And the thing is that this is the same regardless of whether or not you're someone with chronic fatigue syndrome or you're well and not normal. You know, it doesn't matter what you've got. The response is going to be the same pretty much on how to affect the change. Now, a lot of people give a lot of different advice. You know, like when you're come to that moment, count to 10 or do this or rah rah rah, and or like breathe or stuff like that. Now, some of it's good advice, but it doesn't match up with reality. So if you treat I would class this under practical mindfulness, okay, and which is something I teach. And if we go away from this for a moment, if you think about how you want to respond as a skill, so it's a skill, a new skill, because you can develop this as a skill. You can develop as a habit, a behavior, a skill. So let's say that right now you're irritable and someone says something to you and you just snap at them. Like, do you want to keep doing that? If you do, then this video is not for you. But if you want to stop snapping at people, and then, you know, feeling bad afterwards, like, oh man, I snapped at my boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, uncle, aunt, dog, pet, guinea pig again, and I just feel awful, and I want to stop this. You know, next time I'm going to, like, I'm just going to stop it. Okay, and then I'll follow this advice. Rah, rah, rah. It's a skill set. Now, let's go to the extreme. If you needed to if you needed to be able to defend yourself, when is the time to learn to defend yourself? Is the time to learn to defend yourself in that moment when you must defend yourself? Or do you learn to defend yourself outside of that moment and then train how to use that skill set in that moment of duress? Like, it's obvious, James. You learn to defend yourself first and then use it in a moment of duress. Like, cool, okay. Let's say that you need the skill set to be a barista, to make coffee. Okay? There's a coffee competition coming up, and you want to enter it. You've never made coffee before, but that's fine. You want to enter in this coffee competition. Do you wait till the day of the coffee competition, step up in front of the judges with the machine in front of you and go, I shall make coffee? I'm like, no, that's silly. You would learn to make coffee first, and then you would apply that information in that moment of duress or that event moment. You know, that moment when you need it. Okay, and the reason why I went self-defense or coffee is to show you that it's not, it's everywhere. So we learn skills. Us as human beings learn skills better in a pristine environment. Like, if you've got the option to do this with learning new skills, then you would learn the skills in a pristine environment. So, you know, on days when you're not feeling bad, that's when you'd start. Pristine environment. And then when you've learned that, then you start adding stress to it. And you make it harder and harder and harder. And so what happens is you have already got the foundation for the skill set, you introduce stress, and then you learn how you can still use that skill set under duress. And then as you keep going, you build up your skill set for dealing with the duress and using that skill set. So it's a whole bunch of skills. And the same thing comes to when you don't want to snap at someone, or you don't want to be a jerk, or you don't want to be an asshole, whatever the way you talk about it is. I would suggest swapping it out to treating it as suboptimal. Think of it as my response is suboptimal. It is suboptimal. How can I move it to being more optimal? Okay, and this does a whole bunch of wonderful, really good things for your brain, including less of you putting yourself down. You should only ever be as harsh on yourself as is productive, because at this certain point, harshness just is unproductive. Okay, and harshness, when I use it here, is more of that incentive to do better. Okay, so if you want to learn to respond optimally in a situation that up to now you have been responding suboptimally, learn the skill set when you don't need it, kind of thing. So when people say, you should breathe, the very first thing I teach people, after I teach them what I'm sharing here about learning the skill set over here, is breathe. Because we deal with self-defense, martial arts, or even in moments of crisis or in moments of high stress at work, we find ourselves not breathing, and not breathing does a whole lot of not good things to us. So by breathing, you start making the good things happen. And I don't have enough time right now. Just breathing good, not breathing stresses the body out even more. So breathing's really good. Why would you start practicing breathing, which is a new skill set, actively breathing, mindfully breathing, in the moment of duress? It makes it so much harder. Your moment, you're going to snap at someone before you even think of, I should take a breath, I should breathe first. Like, why would you think to do that? Your brain only knows what you put in. If you haven't put that into it, it's not going to suddenly recall it. You know, you need to practice it. So practice it over here. Breathe. Take a moment. Breathe. Any moment, you can just stop and mind like, breathe. You know, and if something starts to ruffle your feathers a little bit, tiny little bit, stop and breathe. And that's you building up to when your feathers aren't ruffled a tiny bit, like you're ready to draw your sword and have at them. You've already started to practice to breathe. And then you can move that on and build up to even more things. But a lot of good advice comes, but no one deals with the fact that it's a new skill set. Develop the skill set outside of when you need it. This is ideally how you develop new skill sets. There are some skill sets that you must develop under pressure. There are some skill sets that can be taught under pressure, but in ideal circumstances, you would learn in pristine, as close to a pristine environment as possible, and then introduce stress. Okay, so next time you find yourself having a suboptimal response and being an arsehole or a jerk, whatever you call it, think on what you want to be able to do next time as a more optimal response and start practicing that outside of the stressful time. Okay? It will save you so much time and heartache, and it does work. Is it hard work? Yeah. It's a skill set. It requires ongoing practice. You can do this and you can practice this for years, and you can still find yourself where you'll have moments where like you'll respond suboptimally, but they become lesser number, fewer in between, and they are observably usually less worse than what your original suboptimal response is. So only ever be as harsh on yourself as you need to, guys, and still take that step forward. Be kind to yourself, but if you don't want to be a jerk or an arsehole, start practicing it outside of tension. And then when tension comes, and it will, we've got chronic fatigue syndrome, feeling irritable is a thing, then you might start finding yourself making more optimal choices. I do have more free bunch of training. If anyone ever wants some of this, just message me and I'm happy to send it to you. The more the merrier. So if you have any questions, comments, like to introduce yourself, do so below. I will respond. Like, share, subscribe, hit the little notification button, and thank you very much for letting me share with you day 85.